The Green River cuts through the Washington landscape like a cold, dark ribbon. It is utterly quiet. In the summer of 1982, the water looked perfectly peaceful to anyone passing by. But the river was holding a terrifying secret. Tangled beneath the surface, anchored by a rusted bicycle frame, was a truth that would soon fracture an entire community. It was a human body. "16-year-old Wendy Cofield had not just drowned. She had been discarded. To understand how a nightmare of this magnitude begins, you have to look away from the water. You must look at the Pacific Highway south. In the early 1980s, this stretch of road near Seattle was a neon-lit artery of survival. It was a place for runaways, sex workers, and those pushed to the very edges of society. These were women holding on to life by a thread. They worked under the dim streetlights, stepping into cars with strangers to afford their next meal. That was their harsh, fragile normal. But then, the normal began to splinter. The deviation did not happen with a loud scream. It happened with a deafening silence. A girl would stand on a corner at midnight. By 1 a.m, she was gone. Her friends assumed she caught a long ride. She never came back. There was no blood on the pavement. There were no signs of a struggle. Just an empty space where a human being used to stand. At first, society looked the other way. Runaways run, the authorities reasoned. But the whispers on the street grew frantic. The women knew something was hunting them in the dark. In August 1982, the river finally proved them right. Wendy Cofield was found first. Days later, a man searching for empty cans near the riverbank made another horrific discovery. 2 more bodies were hidden in the tall grass. The next day, police found 2 more. Five young women, all dumped in or near the Green River. The illusion of safety in South King County shattered overnight. This was not a string of tragic coincidences. This was a calculated harvest A serial killer was operating in plain sight. Panic seized the community. The Green River Task Force was hastily formed to hunt a phantom. Detectives worked grueling shifts, drowning in a sea of endless tips. They collected over 40,000 suspect names. The investigation became a logistical nightmare. Every man with a criminal record or a dark sedan was questioned. They were looking for a monster. They expected a deranged, terrifying figure hiding in the shadows. But this was their greatest blind spot. Evil does not always look like a monster. Sometimes, evil looks incredibly boring. Enter Gary Ridgway. He was a commercial truck painter. He had a stable job, a wife, and a home in a quiet neighborhood. He attended church. He was spectacularly ordinary. In 1983, police actually questioned Ridgway. A victim was last seen getting into his truck. He admitted to hiring sex workers, but calmly denied any violence. He even passed a polygraph test. The detectives let him go. He simply did not fit the profile of a criminal mastermind. He was too simple, too mundane, too unremarkable. That banality was his ultimate weapon. Ridgway did not lure women with brilliant manipulation. He lured them with the false comfort of normalcy. He often showed them a photograph of his young son. He would leave children's toys on the dashboard of his truck. He manufactured an aura of total safety. Once the victims felt secure, the trap snapped shut. He exploited their vulnerability, strangling them with his bare hands. He did not feel remorse. To him, they were not human beings. They were property. He returned the bodies, a gruesome ritual to relive his absolute control. For 2 decades, Ridgway lived as a ghost. The bodies stopped appearing, but the grief never faded. Families waited by silent telephones for years. The Green River Killer became a dark myth, a boogeyman haunting the Pacific Northwest. The case grew cold, buried under thousands of forgotten files. But science was quietly catching up to the killer. In 2001, forensic technology finally pierced the darkness. A tiny saliva sample taken from Ridgway in 1987 was tested for DNA. The match was absolute. The ordinary truck painter was the phantom. When arrested, Ridgway's mask of normalcy finally slipped. He confessed to 48 murders to avoid the death penalty. He later pleaded guilty to a 49th. Investigators believe the true number is much higher. The courtroom sentencing in 2003 revealed the deepest layer of human tragedy. Family members of the victims stood up, their voices trembling with decades of suppressed agony. They cursed him. They called him an animal. Ridgway sat there, his face completely blank, devoid of any human emotion. Then an elderly man named Robert Rule approached the microphone. His teenage daughter, Linda, had been taken by Ridgway. Robert looked at the man who destroyed his family. He said, "You made it hard to live up to what I believe. But I forgive you." For the first time, Ridgway's cold facade cracked. He wept. It was a shocking collision of profound grace and absolute darkness. The case was closed, but the scars remained permanently etched into the earth. The Green River still flows, washing over the stones where the lost were once hidden. Some lives are remembered through bold headlines, but most are remembered through the quiet, empty spaces they leave behind. The truth does not always disappear at once. Sometimes it recedes slowly, leaving fragile traces in the dark. There are more stories like this, still waiting to be examined. Do the most haunting cases stay with us because of what we know? Or do they linger because of the pieces that never fully fit?